Thank you. The chair recognizes myself for 5 minutes. I want to thank Chairman Nadler for calling this hearing and our witnesses who've joined us today to sound the alarm about the imminent restrictions on American reproductive freedom. For my entire adult life, abortion has been recognized as a legal form of health care, and so have a growing number of types of contraception. That means that I've had the freedom to decide when and if I would become a parent. I did eventually so decide with my husband to have 3 wonderful children, but I had the freedom to make that decision on my own terms after I'd completed years of college, law school, a judicial clerkship, and legal training. I had the freedom to make the decision to become a parent when I was physically, emotionally, and financially ready to take that step. I had the freedom to make that decision once I was ready to spend 30 months being pregnant with all the temporary and permanent physical changes that entails, and ready to spend the next 30 years and counting nurturing those children and putting their needs ahead of my own. I was able to make those decisions about my health and well-being and that of my family because of Roe v. Wade and other cases such as Griswold that recognize that as Americans we have human rights and constitutional rights to privacy and liberty to make these most deeply personal decisions about whether and when to become a parent and whether and whom to marry, ourselves and with those most concerned and close to us, whether family, medical providers, or faith leaders, free from government interference and control. We've heard from some of today's witnesses how having that choice or lacking that choice due to opportunity or resources had a huge impact on their lives. I've also seen the impact upon the health and well-being of clients I represented as a lawyer, of having the freedom, resources, and support, or lack thereof, to make reproductive decisions free from government interference. The vast majority of Americans understand that reproductive health decisions are complex and should be made by a woman and those she's close to based on their individual medical, emotional, financial, and other circumstances, and that the government does not belong in control of that decision. But we're at a point where the draft opinion in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization indicates that the Supreme Court is poised to overturn Roe v. Wade, which will threaten access to abortion care across the country and undermine other personal privacy and liberty rights. Some of our colleagues have suggested that the purpose of this hearing is to pressure the Supreme Court's decision in the Dobbs case. I would suggest that our Republican colleagues, and particularly Mitch McConnell, have already exercised undue influence on the Supreme Court's decision by packing the court with far-right justices. And I would counter that the purpose of this hearing is exactly as its title suggests, to examine the likely impact upon Americans' freedom to make reproductive health care decisions if Roe v. Wade is overturned, opening the door to increasingly restrictive laws and, as Senator McConnell and others have suggested, an outright national ban on abortion care. Last fall, the House voted to pass the Women's Health Protection Act, which would codify many of the rights enshrined in Roe v. Wade and Casey. The Senate needs to join us in protecting this essential human right to privacy and liberty by passing that bill. And if the current Senate won't pass the bill, then the majority of Americans who support having Americans' freedom to make reproductive health care decisions without government interference, they need to know that we need to change the Senate. Restricting access to abortion care has ripple effects across generations. We cannot go back to an era of criminalized abortion. So one of my priorities in Congress has been to address our country's rising and unnecessary rate of maternal mortality, a healthcare emergency that disproportionately affects many of my constituents. The U.S. has a pregnancy-related death rate that far exceeds that of similar developed countries and is exponentially worse for women of color. The vast majority of such deaths are almost entirely preventable. And with abortion healthcare on the chopping block, I'm very concerned about how maternal mortality across the country would be affected. Dr. Robinson, could you address that question for me?
Yes. I've taken care of pregnant people for more than 17 years. And so being a physician who cares for pregnant people, I do understand that there are circumstances where people do need access to the full gamut of options, including abortion care. The same communities that are that are having difficulty having access to compassionate abortion care are the same communities that do have the highest maternal mortality rates. This care is very important, and I think that the thing that we need to focus on is giving these patients what they need so that we can decrease that maternal and infant mortality rate, like making sure that they have access to care and not just once they become pregnant, and then making sure that they can continue that access to care beyond a short postpartum period.
Thank you very much. I see that my time has